All right, so I just started recording, so we're gonna get into it.
Okay.
All right, this is gonna be like the first episode. Welcome to Shower Thoughts with an Asexual. Right now, my name is Jacoby. My name is Jacoby, and this is my friend Olivia. She is from TikTok. Olivia, let's start off with your political alignment, I guess.
I call myself an anti-capitalist and a progressive. Those are the labels that I use.
Got you. All right. I actually met her on TikTok when she first started out. I had like 4,000 followers, and then she had quickly gained a lot more because I don't really do anything on TikTok. I just kind of shit post. She actually posts factual information. I just kind of argue with idiots. I'm gonna be honest. So where can we find you?
My TikTok is at Olivia Juliana. The O is a 0, and Juliana has 2 N's. And on Twitter, it's Olivia Juliana 1. The O is just an O. Those are the 2 places that I mainly post. So
Got you. Okay, we're gonna link those below. So, the first topic, since this is like a random stream, or a random podcast, we're gonna be talking about like what's been going on in Texas and the energy crisis that like most Texians, I don't know what you guys call yourselves, Texans are facing right now.
Yeah.
So let's start with like the core issues, which is obviously like the power infrastructure and like the housing and plumbing infrastructure as well, which really took a beating because my general understanding of what happened in Texas was y'all really couldn't handle like the cold winter because you guys just aren't built for that. Am I like off base when I'm saying that?
No, you're not off base. It's the housing infrastructure here is different because, we're not used to cold weather like this. So our houses aren't insulated as much. Our pipes aren't as thick. We're supposed to be, well acclimated for like hurricanes and extreme heat, not extreme cold.
Yeah. So. And I'm looking at the infrastructurereportcard.com right now, and they gave your energy actually a B+, which I find surprising considering what's been going on. Overall,
Texas it leads the country in energy production. The problem is you're producing a lot of energy, but a lot of it is non-renewable energy. It's natural gas, coal, oil, and like Houston is the energy capital of the world. Like we're really big in producing natural gas, and unlike what my governor Greg Abbott said when he got on Fox News, he blamed it on green energy and solar and wind. At the time this was going on, those were the energy fields that were doing fine. And the reason why there were wind turbines that were not at full production is because they had not taken the proper precautions to prepare them for winter. They could have very easily, like they do in other states that have harsher winters than we do. They chose not to.
Because what was it? I want to say it was like maybe a decade and change ago, Texas actually was in a similar circumstance when they had a giant winter storm where they weren't prepared. This was like, I didn't do like a lot of research on this particular subject or this particular storm simply because like it's not in the purview of what I wanted to talk about, but I do remember that being talked about, how Texas had all of like the recommendations that they needed to do, which included winterizing the wind turbines and upgrading the infrastructure to accommodate future events that could be predicted, like we have seen.
Yup. And as somebody, I lived in Texas my whole life, so it shouldn't be surprising to people that these types of things keep happening. The weather keeps getting more and more extreme every year. And I think it is unfortunate, the weather, it's not predictable, but this catastrophe was largely in part due to lack of investment in infrastructure. And it's purely profit driven to not do those things. And it's just ridiculous that we have all these issues happening when we could have very easily avoided this kind of crisis and we hadn't privatized our energy industry.
All right, so I want to talk about the privatization of the energy industry, excuse me, a little bit later, but specifically I wanted to talk about like the infrastructure. Can you explain what the Texas interchange is? My dumbass. The Texas interconnection is. It's a separate energy, like a separate energy grid from like the rest of America or rest of North America, right? Can you explain more about it? I guess that's what I'm asking.
I'm not super well informed on this. I just know that it is privatized. Like, our grid is not on the same grid as the rest of the country, which I honestly think is so pointless. I think it's just part of the whole we're Texas, we're like our own country. We have economies that are bigger than literal countries, but we can't invest in infrastructure properly. And it's so dumb.
That has
like
ERCOT.
ERCOT is the company or the corporation that is primarily in charge of a lot of the energy sectors in the state of Texas. And it's regulated by the Public Utility Commission and the Texas legislature, which are overseen and assigned by a 3-member panel who is appointed by the governor. So this crisis is tied directly.
I just want to know.
Exactly. It's tied directly to the Texas state legislature and the failure of our governor, Greg Abbott. And I feel like this should be a real wake-up call to a lot of Texans that the people we have voted into office are not doing what they need to prepare us for the new circumstances of life we have. Like, even now, there's been so many blatant failures within the last year that come midterms, I would not be surprised if, with changing demographics and the amount of failures there has been, that we will see a large flip in House and Senate seats within the Texas state legislature. And I would not be surprised if Greg Abbott lost his re-election. Because
wasn't Greg Abbott one of the members of Congress who was supporting segregation? Segregation. What am I trying to think of? Not segregation. It's separation from the country. I'm dumb. Sorry, it's nighttime.
Secession.
I'm stupid. Secession. There it is. Secession, not segregation. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be surprised because Texas can't and won't secede. And I know that there's a lot of people who were like, why? Look around. Like, we failed in basic principles to take care of our people. Like, our governor, we have not only did we just have this failure in our infrastructure and energy. Look at COVID in Texas. Look at the numbers and look at how our politicians have handled it. Not just the state legislator, but our national representatives as well. It's ridiculous to see that within the span of 6 months, we've seen politicians like Ted Cruz and Dan Crenshaw and Greg Abbott not only not take COVID seriously, but not take the proper precautions for this climate change catastrophe, and then on top of that, encourage the mistrust in our election.
Honestly.
And aided in like insurrection. Like, anything that could go wrong went wrong.
Everything.
And they have something to do with it.
Of course. Okay, so just to tie us back to the Texas interchange right now, I think I heard a couple of articles from NBC and whatnot about price gouging. Can you explain more? Like, because I know some woman's bill was like $9,000 yesterday just because of the variable rate plan that she was on with the energy company. Can you just explain that to me? I've never really understood that. But then again, I don't live in a state that has privatized energy,
I'm thinking based off of like economic principles that it's probably like scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
So like the way energy is produced, I think, is there's only so many units of it that can be used at any given time. So if you're using more of it to, you know, heat your house or, you know, boil water, whatever you're doing to use energy, you're using more of it. And if everyone is using more, then the amount you use is going to cost more, especially in times of crisis, and especially when it's so limited that there are people who are without power for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, because I'm looking at a Forbes article. It said 400,000 Texans remained without power until Thursday. And more than 4 million were without electricity at the height of the blackouts. So, like, I guess as a way to sort of transition, what are rolling blackouts in Texas? Because I know you guys have that in the summer as well.
Yeah, so rolling blackouts are where your power is supposedly supposed to be off for a limited amount of time to ensure that we don't have like an overload of the system or of the structure that we have. So it's really only supposed to be, you know, a few hours, but as we saw, a few hours can turn into a few days really quickly. So that doesn't happen in the summer, but that, you know, that's clearly because we're more accustomed to the heat. I think here in Texas, like where I live in the summer, it can get up to like 110 degrees.
Jesus, that's like, that's too much for me.
So imagine like our homes are built to like withstand like extreme heat, so like 110 degrees. Where I live, it got down to 12 degrees. House is not built for that.
Speaking of the houses, I know that home damage and like home repair is like a big thing, along with like just general appliances, because water has been bursting in pipes and just causing thousands upon thousands of damages, thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of damage for separate homeowners. Like, has that happened to you or people that you know, or no?
Absolutely. I know a lot of people like within my town, because I live in a very small community. A lot of people have had their pipes burst or have had stuff going on, but I know that it was really bad in like Houston, where people, you know, have like parking garages and apartments, and it's like you can't really
I can understand
out of that situation. Like me personally, my pipes didn't bust but broke and leaked just a little bit, not a lot, so my father had to crawl underneath our house to fix the pipes. Luckily I have a father who's like a handyman, so he knows how to do it. But like the local hardware stores were out of like PVC pipe and fittings, which are all like basic pipes you can use to do repairs and stuff like that. So, and then that plays into price gouging again too, is people don't have the resources to fix these types of things. And so every time something like this happens in Texas, there's 2 or 3 different you know, businesses that make a lot of money. Plumbers, oil and gas people who sell oil and gas, and people who sell generators, because people don't want to have to face these types of things again.
I completely get that. So we've covered like the basics of what has been going on, but I kind of wanted to ask you specifically what your experience has been, because I know you've been documenting that like sparsely on TikTok from time to time, and I guess I just wanted more of like an in-depth look as to like what happened like day by day or hour by hour, if you will. I don't know. Like
so I live in Southeast Texas, so not really used to the cold here. And I live in an older house. I think my house was built in like the 40s. So Sunday night, we knew that it was going to get cold Monday. We knew that the storm was rolling in Monday, but we didn't realize how bad it was going to get.
Yeah.
So
like, you don't think, oh, I'm going to have to put on boots in Texas, you know? That's not something that you do unless they're cowboy boots.
Like, we like prepared, like, my dad went to college in Missouri, So he knew a little bit about cold weather. So we filled the bathtub with water. We filled like 2 5-gallon buckets with water, just in case, the power did go out or, the water froze up. So we left the pipes dripping, the faucets dripping. And so when I woke up Monday morning, no water, pipes were frozen. So we expected that to happen. It totally normal.
Okay.
And then
My
power was on. Yeah, my power was on all day Monday. And then Monday night at around 6:00, my power went out. So my house doesn't have central air and heat, and a lot of houses in Texas don't. You have like window units, like ACs for the summer. So I'm very fortunate that in my house we have a heater that is big enough to heat our whole house, and it runs off of propane. So that night, Monday night, we had propane and our house was warm, but power was off, water was off. So then Tuesday, power's still out, and we ran out of propane. But at this point, it had gotten...
Gotta call Hank Hill.
Yeah, if only. But at this point, it had gotten pretty bad, and, the roads were slicked over, and a lot of places were closed because of the roads and everything, so we couldn't find propane anywhere. And it was okay for a while, but then it started to get really cold really fast. And I think it was probably like 16 degrees outside, and I had no way of heating my house because I had no propane. So it was literally like the water that was in the bathtub in my house started to freeze. Like it was so cold. And I'm very fortunate that same night that started to happen, my dad was able to get propane to keep our house warm. So we only really had to struggle with it being cold like that extreme in our house for maybe 12 hours. Whereas there's other people who their entire house is just electricity. It's not gas or,
they
solar.
don't have
it's
like
purely
extra stuff to be able to survive.
So
winter.
they can't heat their house because central air and heat is all electric. So you have no heat or no air conditioning in your house at all. So we're very fortunate on that aspect. But it was cold. It was, no electricity for 2 days, no water for 3, and my phone, you can't use your phone because I don't want it to die. Because if I need to call 911 if something happens, or my dad is somewhere, I need to have enough battery to do that. So I just had to sit here in my room and read and I'm not even gonna lie to you. The only book collection I own entirely is the Twilight series. I've never read it before. So I was sitting here in my room, bundled up, and I was reading the Twilight books, and I would like to say, not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. Okay. Also, the movie didn't do it justice.
I didn't realize I'd have to debate Twilight on this channel like first day, but okay. Let's just take a minute. What exactly did you like about the Twilight series?
Edward.
Of course, it's all everyone's team Edward, right? I saw one movie because I lost a bet.
Oh, I've seen all the movies. Multiple times. It's like my comfort movie. Like when I get sad, I go and watch Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2. Like that's my go-to. I always skip New Moon because it's the worst movie, and I don't care about Jacob. So I just always skip that one because he's like the main man in the movie.
Why does no one like Jacob? Everyone hates on Jacob.
I don't know. Because it's just Taylor Lautner. His face just makes me mad.
I get that. I completely get that. But okay, let's hop back on track. You said that like no one, you said Twilight, and you got to take a minute to like acknowledge like Twilight.
Of course.
But
understandably.
You said that like a lot of people didn't have like just the supplies to deal with this.
Yeah.
Why do you think that this storm, I guess, came. Obviously, we know why it came, but like I don't know what I'm trying to say. But let's just move past that because I'm trying to go down a thought path that like
You mean
explain
like
everything.
what caused it? Like,
Yeah, I wanted to go
I
more into detail about what caused it in a sense.
um, and a much simple answer, climate change.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate answer that people in Texas don't want to acknowledge, is that like we are responsible for so much of the pollution and so much of the fossil fuel industry, and we are now experiencing the results of climate change. We are now having to spend money to combat climate change when we could be just making actual changes in the way that we produce and use to combat these issues, but it's easier just to let it happen and spend the money to fix it.
Else. Exactly. So I wanted to use that topic to go on to more of the political side. Obviously, we don't condone making this like hyper political, but like if politicians aren't responding, politicians have to be held responsible. What has your state leadership been doing like during this entire crisis? Just give me a blow by blow of what you can think of off the top of your head, because like I have opinions and, you know, flights to Mexico to catch, but again, I don't have kids who want to go to Cancun in the middle of the night. So
I know that Biden just approved for 77 out of 254 counties to get FEMA relief, which I would like to say 77 out of 254.
That's not.
Are you kidding me? That is not enough. That is not enough for the sheer amount of the population we have. There are 30 million people in Texas.
4 million.
There are 30 million
alone,
people,
right?
Exactly. So if you have 4 million people who lost electricity, who lost running water. You have infrastructure and buildings that have been, you know, destroyed because of what happened. That's not enough to fix all of the problems. But not only that, but, you know, I've seen Texas District 22 former candidate Sri Preston Kulkarni working with AOC and Beto O'Rourke to raise money for relief here in Texas and, you know, food banking and all of that, and making calls to elderly people. I have not seen that from the GOP here in Texas. I have not seen that from John Cornyn or Ted Cruz, who are our senators. And Ted Cruz better count his days in Congress, because the fact that not only has he not been doing what he could do to help, and there are so many things he could have been doing. He could have been doing what Beto O'Rourke is not the Texas senator. He lost his race, and he is still here doing more than the person who has been in Congress since 2013. Exactly. So him leaving to Cancun, which, by the way, I find it very fitting that Ted Cruz would blame this on his wife and children when he very clearly was just as part of what was going on. And then to come back and say, I wanted to escape and give my children, you know, this little outing and keep them warm. I'm sure that a lot of people would have liked to escape what was going on and to keep their children warm and fed.
That's and I find it very ironic too. Oh my God.
I find it very ironic that one of the most anti-immigration politicians crossed the border to go find a better life for his children. I'm sorry. Ted Cruz is one of the biggest failures to come out of the state of Texas, and I'm so extremely disappointed with him. The last, just you know what? We're not even going to talk about 2020. Just in 2021,
you know, the month that we've
in 2021, he brought a case to the Supreme Court to overturn the results of the election, and now he's skipping out of the state to go to Mexico. Greg Abbott is getting on Fox News and lying about this being green energy's fault and saying, this is what happens when you get a Green New Deal. The Green New Deal hasn't been passed.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happens when you don't pass the Green New Deal.
I know earlier, a couple of weeks ago, Ted Cruz was making a big fuss about the Paris Accords, like Paris and Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what does
Not only
Pittsburgh
that,
have to do with Texas, babe? Like, what?
Not only that, but like it was so stupid where he was talking about like Paris jobs or something like that. The Paris Climate Accord is largely ceremonial. It's not something that's actually like legally binding. It's kind of like a pact. Like,
we're
oh
gonna
my
make
God,
an
guys,
effort to do
I'll
something.
do it if you do it. You know, it's like a club. Like, we're gonna try to do better about climate change if you try to do better about climate change. It's just symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
And he politicized something that's not political. It's literally just us trying to combat climate change, and not even that. It is the bare minimum.
It really is. And that's okay. Something that I did want to talk about, just because like we're both on TikTok a little bit. I saw your video about like chastising liberals. Like, what was the liberal like? Because like I am kind of like in the loop as to what liberals were saying, but like what exactly were liberals like saying that got everyone pissed? I knew it was like some liberal shit, but like please explain.
So it definitely started with the journalist Marcus Diapola, who has 2.6 million followers on TikTok.
Yep.
And he made a video about what was going on in Texas, and it was largely, a very, very good video. And at the very end, he said, enjoy your power outages or enjoy your blackouts, Texas. You voted for them. Mm-hmm. And he had like opinion written on the top. And I want to clarify, a lot of people are really on me about this because I have been criticizing him extremely for this, and they're saying, well, he's right. Yeah, he is right. Texas, this is because of our legislator, but we did not vote for this. There are so many Democrats here in Texas. There are so many people who voted for this who did not vote for this. But not only that, why are you politicizing people dying? And why are you politicizing? And then from there, it went on to people saying, well, I don't care what's going on in Texas because Texas is a red state. And that was when the problem started to arise. Is people
so fucked up to say.
People honestly saying that, and like seeing comments that say like they should freeze, like I hope their fingers fall off, like genuinely wishing harm on, like I said, this is 30 million people.
To random ass people who you don't know if they voted for Trump or not. Yeah.
And like, for me, that was so incredibly insensitive. And it's not that I want an apology or that I want people to agree with me. Mm-hmm. I want people to understand that
it's a more complex issue.
Yeah. What happened here in Texas, while it is political, and there are Republicans here in Texas who voted for these people, the communities that were largely affected by this were lower income communities, which are primarily people of color, disabled people, and homeless people. Those are the people who were primarily affected by this. And to just say, you voted for them, those groups of people, not only are they marginalized, but they tend to vote Democrat.
Exactly.
And it's just...
Sorry, yeah, when it came to that take, because I actually did see it, I was thinking to myself, like, I agree, but I would have said, I would have made a dig at Republicans. It's like, well, maybe if it wasn't, like, such a voter suppression state, it would have been different. You know, that's how I would have spun it.
Yeah, the problem definitely wasn't that the dig was made. It's that the dig was made at the expense of the people who liberal policy advocates for.
Exactly.
And not only that, and so I have my own issues, Marcus, because of that. But then to have thousands of people comment on that and say what you're saying is insensitive and wrong. And then this is where I
He
flat
doubled
out,
down,
like,
right?
no, it's not even just that he doubled down. I knew he was going to double down. I knew that was going to happen because he says, my content is for children. Okay, your content is for children, and you're teaching them that activism is conditional, which it's not.
Exactly.
If your activism isn't apolitical, you're not an activist. You're a politician.
Just a piece of shit, dude. That's all
Yes.
you are.
So, but then he used clips of police riots as clickbait for a video. He used clips of police riots to clickbait and be like, I don't often make videos about my opinions, but when I do, they're strong opinions. And then he started talking about how many women he's dated and then said, hi to all my new followers. Honey, you lost 100,000 followers after you said what you said about Texas.
Well,
like,
what does the women that he date have to do with Texas, though? That's my. I'm confused. What?
I think it was clickbait. It was a ploy to, say, hi, I do journalism, and I'm going to use these clips of police. It was a very, I'm going to say, it was a very white man thing to do. It was a very privileged white man thing to do.
That's what it fucking sounds like. Holy shit.
I'm deeply disappointed in that because I expect, okay, this is going to sound so, but it's the truth. I have absolutely zero expectation for white political men on TikTok. I have zero expectations because almost every single one of them who has had a massive platform has done something offensive or disrespectful and has either doubled down on it or it has come out that it was worse than we thought originally. So that is why I will always encourage, if you're looking for, information on specific issues, you need to follow by POC. You need to follow women, and you need to follow, don't be in an echo chamber. Follow some of them. Don't ride or die for them, because at the end of the day, they're just a political commentator. They're not, your idol.
And
they're
that's
just someone
really
on
that just with TikTok in general. That's really, I think, the issue. Since the algorithm is largely like what you want to see, and it aggressively goes to what you want to see, pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Pretty quickly, my For You page was pretty tailored, I blocked all of the big creators because, no one wants to see a 15-year-old girl on the internet unless, you're a pervert or another 14, 15-year-old girl. So, my For You page was pretty tailored, but it's the echo chamber with TikTok specifically that has been created is just so... repetitive isn't the right word because, it gets worse. Compounding.
It's
there it is.
toxic.
It's just so compounding because it's I could say one thing, right? It'd be a whole game of telephone. I'd say apple. By the time it got back to me, it'd be a dragon fruit, That's just the political climate when it comes to TikTok. Not only on Republican, largely on the Republican side, or the right, excuse me, but on the left as well with people like Marcus. You just kind of get, oh, well, this is what I've done, and here we are. Let's not dive too deeply into TikTok because there's two types of
activism on TikTok. There's two types of political creators on TikTok. There are people who start their pages with the genuine intention of creating systemic change. And there are people who start their pages with the intention of gaining social capital. If you're a leftist and your content is made to produce social capital, you're not a leftist, you're a capitalist. You are a social capitalist.
Okay.
So, but that's the problem is people, and then a lot of Californians, and people from California saying, why should we care when y'all didn't care about the California wildfires? And I will admit, Ted Cruz and other Texas Republicans did say some very insensitive things and were very cruel about the California wildfires. But that they do not represent all of us in the same way that, when Donald Trump was president, he did not represent every single American. Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott and Dan Crenshaw do not represent every Texan.
Of course. I would never... the one of the last topics we're going to talk about, but like, what is it really like being a Democrat, like a self-proclaimed, or a leftist in general? What is it like being on the left in Texas? How about that? That's the better question.
I'm a very unique person.
Uh-huh.
I've always been very opinionated and loud. Always been a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So
Same.
I'm used to being looked at funny. I'm used to, being the center of attention, whether it be good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's Texas is unique, and this is true, and I don't know if there's a lot of Texans who will agree with me on this, but this is how I see it because I have lived here my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to disclaim this first, is that I'm sure my white privilege absolutely plays into this, but being politically different in Texas has never been a real issue for me, because I believe that like Southern hospitality is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that just because your views are different doesn't mean people are necessarily going to treat you differently in person. In person, I really don't get treated differently. You're just a person to me. I'm not going to be, rude to you just because you're different than me. I live in a, Republican town. Like, everyone here is a Republican. Everyone at school knows who I am. I'm one of the Democrats,
The Democrats, not a Democrat, the Democrat.
And that's double E like Megan, okay? The Democrat.
Got you.
If you're just nice and you're genuine, I honestly don't think it'll make that much of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, when it comes down to it, there are people who they're gonna come at you because you kind of go against everything that the state is representative of.
Yeah.
Like, I think we should get rid of the oil and gas industry. I think we should make immigration completely legal. Like, all of the core values that kind of tie into Texas politics, I'm against. So it's kind of like swimming against the current, but
okay,
if you're a strong swimmer, you'll make it.
And what are your plans? Like, I'm assuming you plan to get into like the political field at some point.
So I'm planning on going to junior college first to get my basics out of the way for cheap. So that I don't go into crippling debt, which is why Joe Biden should cancel student debt like he said he was going to do. But
that dementia just kind of gets really, that shit irritate. Let's just take a minute to rant. The fact that he's, what the fuck? Sorry, give me a minute.
You're fine.
Sorry. The fact that he's trying to skirt 50,000 for 10 in an effort to reach across the aisle is fucking bullshit. Like, my God.
I'm not surprised,
Like, neither am I. It's just like, bro, you understand where your base is and where your base is heading, especially with the turn of time. Because
Absolutely.
A lot of fucking establishment Democrats are dying out.
He's not going to run again. I don't think he's going to run again. I don't think that Kamala Harris or Vice President Harris, I don't think that she could win a presidential election. I don't. And I think
why not?
Not because I think she's incompetent. I don't think that that's it at all. I think that as a country, we have not progressed to the point where we would have people who would vote for a Black woman. And that I'm not saying that that's
you're absolutely right. That would be the reason that she lost.
Absolutely, because
can't even get a woman
while
in office
there's some people who wouldn't care that she's a woman, there are people who will always care because she is Black. And that's the fact. That's the matter of the fact, is that we're not going to do anything in this country like that until we can actually abolish systemic racism. And we're not even close to doing that.
And that actually takes us into like the final section. Like, what do you think are the major issues that need to be like focused on in this country moving forward? I'm assuming racism and systemic racism is one of them. What
Yes.
are a couple of others, just to give a general overview?
Every single issue that we have in this country, you cannot address and you cannot fix until you fix and address systemic racism and climate change. And you cannot address climate change without addressing racism, and you cannot address racism without addressing climate change, because environmental racism is a huge thing that people don't talk about enough.
Texas
Cancer
is
Alley,
now a prime example of environmental racism.
this
Holy
is a
crap.
prime example of environmental racism. Like, you think the people in River Oaks, where Ted Cruz lives, are struggling as much as the people who live in Fifth Ward, Houston, or Sunnyside, Houston, live off Bissonnette? No. Those are primarily Black and brown communities, and they were the ones that were hit the hardest, and that is environmental racism. That is point blank,
Absolutely
period.
Ridiculous.
That is what's going on. And Texas is horrible about that, because not only do we have, a large percentage of Black people, we have a lot of Hispanic people, a lot of Asian people, a lot of Pacific Islanders. It's a very diverse state. But these demographics are not being catered and cared for as much as they should be. And it's ridiculous. And that's how it is for the rest of the country.
Honestly,
if we don't fix racism within the education system and within the healthcare system and within the prison system, we are not going to be able to fix any other issue, because racism and capitalism are the root of all of our problems.
And see, okay, now just to do a little freeform a bit, like, I think that racism is like the largest issue that we need to focus on. I would
Absolutely
take a different approach in saying that energy is the second most. I would say that education is the second most, because without education, you don't have, because, okay, let me just preface this by saying I am a fan of reacting with the same energy, but I also understand that preventative measures need to be taken when it comes to racial tension. And I think education is the main place where we can start addressing that, because if you educate people from a government standpoint, like a federal government standpoint, because states have clearly proven that they're incapable of doing that, but federally speaking, if we were to like actually educate people in different cultures and not to think that, oh, America number one, derp-de-doo, we would actually move forward. And then just general processes when it comes to people. Okay, so just to bring up a topic on TikTok, you remember, or do you know the Black girl? I don't know her name. I don't know her she said that she doesn't want white people calling her sis, or I think it's they don't want white people calling them sis.
I don't know the but I did see a video. I did see a video about that today, because I had never heard about that before. But because I asked in the comment section, I was like, I've never heard of this. Is this because it's AAVE? And that was the general consensus, is that that's why. And I understand, like, it's, if somebody feels uncomfortable with something, don't do it. Honestly, it's not that hard of a concept to understand.
And it's like, it's not even it's not a new concept. It's literally like, what I don't get is, I literally went on the sound of that video and I saw so many people literally just saying sis, like, oh, what's up, sis? And it's like, bro, you realize if this was the N-word, you get punched, right? Like, this is literally a Black person saying, do not call me this because it means something different coming out of your mouth. And white people just doing it just to get a rise out of you. And it's like,
even if it wasn't a racial issue and it was just this woman saying, I'm uncomfortable with this.
Exactly.
People doing
don't know how to set boundaries. They don't know how to respect them.
It's reactionary politics. It's reactionary. That's what people do, is they want attention, so that's how they do it. As far as that goes, I don't think that's a big deal. If she doesn't want people to call her that, that's fine. I hear you. I see you. And okay, just don't do it. Like, it's not that hard of a concept to understand. Just don't do it.
And honestly, I think with education, less instances like that, like obviously like there are more convoluted incidences, but like less obviously offensive incidents like that would occur. You know, obviously there are going to be stupid people every time, all the time, but still.
We need to start in schools first and foremost, and that's going to raise the issue of concurrent powers, because in the United States, schools are regulated by the state and not the federal government. Although the federal government can give funding and can put regulations on education in a state, but we can't. And here's the problem that I see arise with this. We cannot rely on states to overhaul their education system and to teach people how to be actively anti-racist and to teach the true history of racism and its roots here in America, because some states will do it and some states won't.
Exactly.
And like
the whole states' rights issue all over again.
Exactly. And so, California would probably do a much better job at teaching how to be anti-racist than Texas or Alabama or Mississippi. And it's purely because we still have roots of systemic racism here.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to solve any of that until we fix the education system. So that would have to be something where the federal government would have to step in and say, we are instituting a mandate for these policies. And how that would end up working out is that the states don't have to follow those mandates, but if they don't, they will lose funding for something. So how like an example of how that plays out is like, the federal government said, we want every state to raise their drinking age to 21. And we're going to put a mandate saying that you don't have to do it, but if you don't, we're going to take away your federal funding for roads and highway construction. So the states, you can notice when you drive in those states, like Louisiana was the last to raise the drinking age to 21, they do not have very good highways. And you can feel it in certain spots, and that's because they didn't get federal funding for the years that they didn't raise the drinking age to 21. And so if we did something like that in states where we mandated this education, I think if I were going to go about this, I would say these are the teaks. That's what they're called in Texas, is teaks. These are the points that you need to talk about in your education. And if you don't,
you lose funding.
We're going to take your federal funding away, but it needs to be for something that is very specific, that's going to make states pay attention. So I think, once again, you're either going to have to
that would be. That's the question. Because a lot of things, like roads would be something that I would think of. That's just because, like, that's the example that you just gave. What would be another example? Like, I feel like maybe electricity, maybe
energy.
Just to say, like,
But energy. But then problems arise again with if you did that, racism, you would have other states like Texas. It's a constant rolling issue, and that is where the problem arises of you cannot combat these issues until you combat capitalism.
Actually,
and that's the problem. It's all a big circle.
The circle just gets so like, just to give you like a background in me, I studied political science and philosophy in college, and I studied that for like 4 years. It was complex, and it makes me realize that like politics is really like a long game scenario, but it's like sometimes I get burnout. Like, what's the easiest way for you not to get burned out on politics? Because like these are big issues, but people are people. People get tired, you know? Like, I guess as a final thing, like, where do you go? Like, what do you do to get your information?
I get burned out. I've been doing politics like this since June is when I started. And I don't just, do TikTok. I've worked with multiple organizations, lots of organizing, lots of stuff like that. But I absolutely get burned out. And if you're truly invested in it, it will start to weigh on you heavily. And that's part of the important reason of why you have to be able to look at these are the bad things that's happening. These are the negative things that come along with all of this that's going on.
Mm.
You have to be able to focus on the good. You have to be able to focus on the good, because while there are certain policies where there are aspects of it that come out that are bad, you have got to be able to look at the little victories and the small wins, because if you don't,
you get lost.
You are going to crush yourself with the weight of the reality that there is so much more negative than there is good. Also, take breaks. Take breaks. You have to take breaks. You have to.
Are my best friend, honestly.
I recently just took a break because between the election and the insurrection and all the other things that were going on,
the insurrection
and then
is just a separate
being a person
entirely.
Yeah, being a person on top of it and having your own personal life,
mm-hmm.
It is a crushing weight that I don't think people understand. And especially being, somebody with influence and having a platform where you have hundreds of thousands of people watching what you do and commenting on what you do, it is exhausting. And people don't realize that creators and TikTokers and all these, they are people. They are people. But once that camera screen goes off, they have an entire life outside of that.
And it like that, I think that ties into our echo chamber talk. I feel like they treat the TikToker like the screen, and if it doesn't do exactly like they want, they get so upset. But okay.
Absolutely. It's exhausting. I don't want to do TikTok for the rest of my life. I started TikTok on a whim,
and now you're here.
Here we are. I'm going to college in a few years, and am I gonna go into politics one day? We'll see. If this is the state of it, I don't know that I can do it, because anyone who knows me will tell you I am a very emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely care about all people. I genuinely care about all people. My entire life, I have wanted to leave the world a better place than it was when I came into it. And I constantly mourn and grieve over the struggle and the issues that so many people face. And being a politician, I'm not sure that I could handle that, because I know for a fact, if I was sitting on Capitol Hill and a bill came up that said, okay, we'll address systemic racism in the prison system, but we're not going to help Black trans women, or we're not going to help pregnant women. I will not compromise on that. I will not.
As you should.
Am so,
and not,
look, I really don't. I don't cuss very much, but I'm not going to compromise at the expense of people. I absolutely will not compromise when people's livelihood is what is at stake. And it disgusts me that there are so many politicians who do. And you're going to have to bleep out that cuss word. Bleep that out. Because I do not cuss on social media, but I feel very strongly about that.
Hey,
so
do what you gotta do. All right. So this has been a good first episode. Hopefully we can have you in the future.
Absolutely.
Again, post, what are your socials again? Just making sure that everyone heard it.
At Olivia Juliana on TikTok's 2 N's and the O is a 0, and Olivia Juliana 1 on Twitter. The O is just an L.
All right.